this video will spoil the end of Chainsaw Man. And no, I don't mean I'm going to spoil the latest chapter. I mean, I am going to spoil the end. The final page. The last sound of the ripcord. Because the author, Tatsuki Fujimoto, hasn't just foreshadowed the ending. He has quite literally screamed it in our faces since chapter 1, and we were all too busy looking at Power's pads to notice. The game plan has been revealed, and set up to quite literally turn the world upside down. Beginnings will become endings. The concept of life will be revealed as the ultimate villain, and the key to everything lies in the most unlikely of places, a slice of toast. I am not kidding. The very fact that Pochita looks like a dog, and the fact that he has a handle on his head, has completely given away the game. This is the conclusion drawn up by analyzing the Nostradamus prophecy, not as a vague prediction, but as a literal instruction manual for the apocalypse. If you have not heard this before, I legitimately believe that this is the best Chainsaw Man theory, period. And I'm someone who really doesn't like theories. I think a lot of them tend to be far-fetched, tunnel vision, guided examinations of hyper-specific details. But this theory is a completely different beast, and it can be summarized in 2 words: pole shift. Wait, wrong script. It can be summarized in 2 words: birth and erasure. Now, unfortunately, without the rest of this massive multi-hour deep dive, those words are meaningless. But those 2 words put in quite a lot of work. They explain why the 4 horsemen are sisters, why Makima cried at the movies, and why Denji is going to have to make a choice that will break the internet. So, buckle up, grab your Pochita plushie, because we are about to perform an autopsy on the end of the world. Hello and welcome to AnimeAutopsy, your source for dissecting everything in the animango world. My name's AnimeAutopsy. For as long as I can remember, I have only existed to suffer, much like Kobeni's car. Today, we are doing something massive. We aren't just reviewing a chapter. We are taking a deep, surgical dive into the Academy Saga, the Public Safety Saga, and the Please Stop Traumatizing Denji Saga to figure out the identity of the King of Terror. We're going to talk about why the Falling Devil is a chef, why Fami loves pizza, and why a certain fake Sawman might actually be the most important character in the series. But before we cut into the cadaver of this story, I have a deal for you, a contract, if you will. If you subscribe to AnimeAutopsy right now, I will personally ensure that the future devil does not spoil your favorite show for you. It's a fair trade. You get content, I get validation, and we all avoid the crushing weight of inevitable spoilers. So go on, smash that button like it's a small, unsuspecting chicken devil. To understand the end, we have to go back to the beginning, or rather, the family reunion from hell. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: control, war, famine, death. We know Makima. She was the control devil. She wanted to create a perfect world by using Chainsaw Man to erase bad things. Her definition of bad things included death, war, and hunger, which ironically would mean erasing her own sisters. That is some peak sibling rivalry right there. I love you so much, I'm gonna erase your concept from existence so we can have a nice dinner. Then we have Yoru, the war devil. She's basically the complete opposite. Where Makima was cold, calculated, and terrifyingly competent, Yoru is, well, she's a bird. Sometimes. And she's also surprisingly incompetent. I mean, she got beaten by Chainsaw Man, eaten, weakened, and is now stuck inside the body of a high school girl named Asa Mitaka. And then there's Fami, the famine devil. She loves pizza. She has a tilted head, and she seems to be playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing checkers. But here's the thing that connects them all, the thing that everyone misses: love. The theory goes like this. Each horseman represents a distorted form of love. Makima represented storgy, or familial love. She wanted a family. She wanted an equal. But because she was control, she could only form relationships through fear. Yoru represents eros, or romantic and possessive love. Notice how she needs to own something to turn it into a weapon. That is toxic possessiveness 101. You are mine, so I can break you. Fami? The jury is still out, but she likely represents philaudia, or self-love, which manifests as self-preservation and hunger, or perhaps a twisted form of pragma, enduring, practical love. She wants to save the world, but only so she can keep eating delicious food. So, what does death want? If the pattern holds, the Death Devil isn't going to be a Grim Reaper with a scythe. The Death Devil is going to be someone who loves humanity too much. Agape, unconditional love. Think about it. Death is the ultimate release. In a world full of devils, pain, bad movies, and taxes, death is the only peace. What if the Death Devil's goal isn't to kill everyone for fun, but to save them from the suffering of living? That would make them the ultimate antagonist for Denji, a guy whose entire life is suffering, but who refuses to die because he wants to touch boobs and eat toast with jam. This recontextualizes everything. The King of Terror, prophesied by Nostradamus, isn't coming to destroy the world. She's coming to save it by killing everyone. It's a mercy kill on a planetary scale. Now let's talk about the King of Terror. In chapter 122, Fami drops this bombshell. In July 1999, the great King of Terror will descend. Most people assume this King of Terror is the Death Devil, but look closer at the prophecy. It says the King of Terror comes to resurrect the great King of Angulmois. That sounds like two different entities, and here's where we get into the it was right there territory. Remember the Gun Devil? We spent all of part 1 terrified of the Gun Devil. It was the ultimate evil. And then, it turned out the Gun Devil was already defeated. It was in pieces. It was a political tool, a red herring. What if the King of Terror is another red herring? We have a fake Saw Man running around. A guy who looks like Chainsaw Man but isn't. He claims to work for justice. He has a surgical implant in his chest, and he seems to know everything. There is a theory, a very popular, very insane theory, that Fake Saw Man is actually the Fire Devil, or rather a human contracted with the Fire Devil. Fire fits the King of Terror vibe. Fire spreads. Fire consumes. And in the church arc, we saw people transforming into Chainsaw Man knockoffs after making contracts with the Fire Devil. But why Angulmois? In 16th century French wordplay, Angulmois is often linked to the Mongols. But in the context of Chainsaw Man, it sounds a lot like Armageddon. Or, if you want to get really spicy with the Japanese wordplay, it could link back to the chainsaw itself. What if the king of Angulmois is Pochita? Wait. Put down the pitchforks. Hear me out. Fami wants to starve Yoru to make her strong enough to kill the Death Devil. But she also needs a Chainsaw Man. Why? Because Chainsaw Man eats names. He eats concepts. If the Death Devil is unkillable, because death is a fundamental law of the universe, then you can't just punch her to death. You can't shoot her. You have to erase her. The King of Terror, Death, descends. The King of Angulmois, Pochita, or Erasure, is resurrected as Black Chainsaw Man. And they fight. If Pochita eats death, death ceases to exist. And that brings us to the pole shift of the series. A world without death. Imagine that. No one can die. You get cut in half, you stay alive. You get eaten, Your conscience in the stomach. Eternal life in a world of devils. That isn't paradise. That is hell. That is what Makima wanted. And that is what AnimeAutopsy thinks is the bad ending. We need to talk about the power scale here, because it's broken. In Chainsaw Man, devils are powered by fear. The more you fear a concept, the stronger the devil. We have the primal fears. These are fears that are hardwired into the human brain. You don't learn them. You are born with them. The darkness devil, the fear of the unknown, the fear of what you can't see, the falling devil, the fear of heights, no, the fear of losing control, the fear of descending into trauma. The falling devil appears as a chef. Why? Because falling is a process. It's a preparation. She cooks you by making you relive your worst memories until you have no will to live, and then she serves you up to the residents of hell. But notice something. The falling devil takes orders from Fami, a primal fear taking orders from a horseman. That implies a hierarchy. If Fami can control the falling devil, likely by starving her or offering her a really good deal on ingredients, then the horsemen are above the primal fears. And who is the strongest horseman? It has to be death. Everyone fears death. Even people who fear darkness fear it because it might lead to death. Even people who fear falling fear the sudden stop at the end, which is death. Death is the source of all fear. So, the death devil shouldn't just be strong. The death devil should be godlike, like erase the universe with a snap levels of strong. Which brings us to the biggest question. Why hasn't she shown up yet? Unless she has. Okay, look. The Kobeni is the death devil theory is a meme. It's funny. She's invincible. She's always surviving. But let's look at the evidence. Kobeni's contract is secret. She's surprisingly good with a knife, and everyone around her dies. But no, that's too silly, even for Fujimoto. The real answer is probably much more terrifying. The death devil isn't hiding. The death devil is waiting. She is waiting for humanity to reach peak despair, because just like a chef waits for the water to boil, death waits for the fear to ripen. Let's talk about the dog, the orange dog, the best boy, Pochita. Why does the chainsaw devil have the power to erase concepts from existence? Chainsaws cut things. They don't delete them from the timeline. If I cut a sandwich in half with a chainsaw, I have two messy sandwich halves. I don't suddenly forget that sandwiches exist. So, Pochita isn't the chainsaw devil. That's a name the devils gave him. That's his street name, his rapper. There are two main theories here. The chaos devil, because chaos disrupts order and breaks continuity. Or the birth devil. This is the AnimeAutopsy favorite. Chainsaws were originally invented to assist in childbirth. Look it up. It's horrifying. It's called a symphysiotomy. Do not Google images. Just trust me. Birth is the opposite of death. If death is the end, birth is the beginning. But Pochita eats devils to erase them. He is doing a reverse birth. He is unbirthing them from reality. If Pochita is the birth devil or something related to existence, it explains why the horsemen want him. Makima wanted to use him to birth a better world. Yoru wants to make him vomit the nuclear weapons devil back up, a rebirth. Fami wants to control him to stop the prophecy. And this explains the intestine scarf. It's an umbilical cord. It was right there. The character design told us the answer in Chapter 1. He's not covered in gore just for fun. He's covered in the symbolism of life and death. Now, we have to talk about the humans. Or the humans who are acting very sus. Yoshida. This guy. He shows up, beats the hell out of Guangxi, refuses to elaborate, leaves, comes back in part 2, stalks Denji, and claims to be from an organization that is not exactly public safety. What is his goal? He keeps trying to stop Denji from transforming. He threatened Nayuta. He seems to know about the Death Devil prophecy. Here's the theory. Yoshida works for the Death Devil, or rather, a faction that wants to maintain death. Think about it. If Makima won, death would be gone. If Yoru wins, there will be a war so big it might wipe out humanity, which stops the fear of death because everyone is dead. Public safety and Yoshida want the status quo. They want people to keep dying at a normal rate. They are the guardians of the natural order, and that puts them on a collision course with the Chainsaw Man Church. The church is a cult, but it's a cult designed to feed the fire devil. By making thousands of fake chainsaw men, they are diluting the fear of the real Chainsaw Man. Weakening him? No. They are creating chaos, and chaos feeds war. Fami is behind the church. She wants to make Yoru strong enough to kill the Death Devil. So the plan is, starve people. Start a war, create a fake hero, kill death. It's a simple plan. What could possibly go wrong? Except for, the apocalypse. So where does this leave us? We have a high school girl with a war criminal in her head. We have a starving horseman controlling a primal chef. We have a government agent with tentacles who knows too much. And we have Denji who just wants a girlfriend and a normal life. The tragedy of Chainsaw Man is that Denji is the only one who doesn't have a grand plan. And that is why he's the most dangerous variable. Everyone, Makima, Yoru, Fami, Yoshida, tries to control him. But you cannot control chaos. The pole shift of the series, the moment everything flips, is coming. The Death Devil will arrive. And when she does, I suspect she won't look like a monster. She will look like someone we know. Or maybe she will look like peace. But that is a theory for the next section of this massive script. Because if I keep talking, my throat is going to succumb to the dryness devil. I've been AnimeAutopsy. This has been the deep dive. And I will see you in the next video. Wait, don't go anywhere. Because we need to get technical. I've prepared a comprehensive report on the state of the franchise as of November 2025 to prove these theories aren't just speculation, they are happening right now. By November 2025, the cultural and narrative landscape of Tatsuki Fujimoto's Chainsaw Man has evolved from a subversive deconstruction of the shonen demographic into a sprawling transmedia examination of eschatological horror and industrial statecraft. The simultaneous crescendo of the manga's second part, specifically the sequence spanning chapters 209 to 220, and the global theatrical release of Chainsaw Man the movie. Reze's arc represents a calculated singularity in modern media franchising. This convergence is not merely a coincidence of scheduling, but a thematic harmonization that collapses the boundaries between the series' past traumas and its future apocalypse, creating a feedback loop of brand synergy that amplifies the existential dread permeating the narrative. The current state of the franchise is defined by a radical ontological shift, the erasure of death. Following the events of Chapter 219, titled The Bereft, wherein Pochita, the Chainsaw Devil, consumes the Death Devil, the series has ventured into uncharted metaphysical territory. This narrative decision has fundamentally altered the stakes of the story, moving beyond the binary of survival versus extinction into a gray zone of eternal, agonizing stagnation. Simultaneously, the theatrical release of the Reze arc film on October 24th, 2025, has grossed over $142 million globally, reinvigorating interest in the Bomb Girl, just as the manga's plot necessitates the return of high-yield explosive concepts. We need to conduct an exhaustive analysis of the Chainsaw Man narrative ecosystem as of late 2025. We need to dissect the catastrophic implications of a deathless world, the geopolitical resurgence of the Soviet Union within the series' alternate history, and the intricate machinery of Yoru's ascension through the reinvention of nuclear weaponry. By synthesizing critical reviews, detailed chapter breakdowns, and deep lore community analysis, we unearth the underlying architecture of Fujimoto's storytelling, where the removal of concepts does not simplify reality, but plunges it into a chaotic surplus of suffering. Part 2 of Chainsaw Man has consistently defied the frenetic, high-octane pacing that characterized the public safety saga, opting instead for a methodical, character-driven psychological horror that critics have described as a mundane apocalypse. The introduction of Asamitaka and the War Devil shifted the narrative perspective from Denji's chaotic hedonism to a structured, neurotic examination of guilt, weaponization, and shared consciousness. However, the recent narrative arc, accelerating aggressively through late 2025, has shattered this slow burn approach. The central conflict has pivoted from the passive avoidance of the Nostradamus prophecy to the active management of a collapse that is already underway. The Age of Devils, a theoretical framework proposed by analysts within the fandom, has transitioned from threat to reality, precipitated by the internecine conflict among the Four Horsemen: control, war, famine, and the now erased death. The narrative has moved past the school arc dynamic into a global crisis, marked by the reintroduction of primal fears and the fundamental rewriting of physical laws. The release of Chainsaw Man. The movie Reze arc serves as a critical fulcrum for the franchise's late 2025 strategy. Released in Japan in September and North America in October, the film is not a standalone artifact, but a brand synergy engine designed to recontextualize the manga's current events. The film's commercial success indicates a profound audience hunger for the tragic romantic subplots that define the series' early run, a stark contrast to the bleak, nihilistic tone of the current Deathless chapters. Analysts have noted that the timing of the film is deliberate. Just as the manga reintroduces the concept of nuclear weapons, a power set intrinsically linked to Reze, the bomb hybrid, the film reminds the global audience of her character's emotional and tactical significance. This strategy mirrors the production cycles of other major franchises like Jujutsu Kaisen, where anime adaptations are timed to coincide with manga character returns, suggesting that Reze's reintegration into the manga narrative is imminent and inevitable. The defining event of the late 2025 storyline, and perhaps the entire series, is the confrontation between Chainsaw Man and the Death Devil, concluding in Chapter 219 with the partial or total consumption of the latter entity. This event represents a theological singularity, the removal of the ultimate inevitability from the human experience. In Chapter 219, the conflict between the War Devil and the Death Devil reaches its terminal velocity. The Death Devil is characterized by a paradoxical, twisted affection for humanity, claiming that her change of heart regarding the apocalypse has weakened her. She mocks Yoru, considering her a disgrace amongst the sisters, yet paradoxically identifies Yoru's weakness as the quality that makes her a perfect candidate for weaponization. The battle concludes not with Yoru's triumph, but with Pochita's chaotic intervention. In his Black Chainsaw Man form, Pochita slices apart Yoru's arm and the Death Devil simultaneously. Despite Yoru's desperate pleas for him not to swallow her sister, Pochita consumes the Death Devil. The scene is depicted with visceral horror. Yoru is left trembling, barely able to utter her sister's name, screaming Chainsaw Man's name in a mix of rage and grief. This act is an ontological violation. Unlike previous erasures documented in the series, such as the Ear Devil, which resulted in a temporary, confusing removal of the concept of hearing, the erasure of death breaks the biological imperative of all living things. Yoru's reaction underscores the severity. Losing death is not merely a tactical defeat, but a fundamental rewriting of her existence and the rules of the universe she inhabits. The immediate aftermath of Pochita's consumption of death is the cessation of mortality. But critical analysis suggests this is a fate far worse than extinction. The research indicates that while the concept and finality of death are erased, the physiological capacity for damage, pain, and entropy remains intact. Victims of fatal injuries, such as those sliced apart by Yoru or the Falling Devil, do not die. Instead, they remain in a state of unbearable pain or halted regeneration. The release that death provides is removed, leaving organisms trapped in broken, non-functioning bodies. This aligns with the Sorite's paradox interpretation of Pochita's power. The concept is erased, but the pile of implications remains. The end is gone, but the process of dying continues indefinitely. Speculation regarding the Vor Devil or the specific mechanics of Pochita's consumption suggests that the physical consequences of entropy might simply be paused or mutated. If Pochita only ate part of the Death Devil, as some analysts debate, the concept might exist in a limited, corrupted fashion, leading to a zombie reality where biological functions are grotesque parodies of life. As noted in fan analysis, a world without death does not equate to a world of peace. It necessitates a reality where Pochita might need to puke death back up to restore the natural order. The alternative is a hellscape of accumulation, overpopulation, unceasing torture, and biological stagnation, where the aging process creates immortal, senile entities. To understand the gravity of the Death Devil's erasure, it is necessary to compare it with other conceptual erasures observed within the Chainsaw Man universe. When nuclear weapons were eaten, they were totally forgotten. Physical stockpiles vanished, but Cold War tension remained. When Nazis and World War II were eaten, historical events were altered, leaving the geopolitical landscape frozen in a pre-war Cold War hybrid, where the USSR persists. When ears were eaten, organs vanished. Hearing persisted, causing confusion, but immediate adaptation. But with death, the erasure targets biological cessation itself. The effect on physical reality is that pain remains, but the end is impossible. The societal implication is existential horror, infinite torture, and a total disruption of the cycle of life. The erasure of death differs because it removes the terminus of biological processes without removing the processes themselves. This aligns with the aging devil theories, suggesting that without death, aging becomes the dominant horror. In this new world, humans are condemned to age eternally without the release of expiration, turning the world into a nursing home of the damned. Following the consumption of death, the narrative focus shifts to Yoru's desperate, rage-fueled bid to reclaim superiority and defeat Chainsaw Man. This arc, primarily covered in chapters 209 through 220, involves the controversial return of nuclear weapons. not through regurgitation, but through reinvention or conceptual resurrection, a plot point that has sparked intense debate regarding the consistency of Fujimoto's world building. A critical narrative turning point occurs when Yoru regains a significant portion of her power through the sudden reemergence of nuclear weaponry. Research indicates a divergence in interpretation regarding the mechanics of this return, but the prevailing theory posits a scientific reinvention. The reinvention theory states that Chainsaw Man previously erased the history and memory of nukes, but not the scientific potential for nuclear fission. As war escalated globally in Part 2, humanity, specifically the United States, scientifically rediscovered the process. This reinvention birthed a new nuclear weapons devil, or re-empowered Yoru, with the fear of this new technology. This aligns with the notion that scientific truths, unlike cultural constructs like Nazism, can be rediscovered if the underlying physics remain. A minority view, the regurgitation hypothesis, suggests that the chaotic battle with Pochita may have forced him to vomit up the nuclear weapons devil he consumed in the past. However, the text of Chapter 209 and subsequent analysis supports the idea that the use of nukes provided Yoru with an insane power boost, allowing her to decimate the falling devil. The sudden remembering of nuclear weapons implies that the erasure was superseded by a new manifestation of the fear, rendering the previous erasure null. In a bid to match Pochita's Black Chainsaw form, Yoru executes a ruthless strategic maneuver in Chapter 220. She sacrifices her children, the Gun Devil and the Tank Devil, turning them into gauntlets to replace her severed arms. This act is laden with psychological complexity. Yoru previously expressed hesitation to sacrifice her kin, viewing them as her children. However, the rage induced by her sister's erasure and her profound inferiority complex drives her to violate this taboo. She essentially cannibalizes her own family to prove her supremacy, replacing her limbs with the instruments of industrial warfare. In a twisted subversion of the nakama or power of friendship trope common in shonen manga, Yoru weaponizes her bonds. She utilizes the guilt of sacrificing her allies to strengthen her weaponry, a mechanic established early in Part 2. By sacrificing the gun and tank devils, beings she holds dear, she creates weapons of immense destructive capability. The resurgence of nuclear weapons and Yoru's reliance on the gun and tank devils serves as a sharp critique of American foreign policy. Analysts have noted that Yoru's behavior, justifying extreme violence and the sacrifice of allies for the sake of victory, mirrors the perception of American imperialism. Her speech in Chapter 220 about the magnificence of war, depending on country and comrades, acts as a darkly ironic reflection of the military-industrial complex, where bonds are forged in blood and maintained through mutual destruction. The fact that the gun and tank devils were stockpiled in the US and USSR, respectively, further cements the Cold War allegory that permeates Part 2. The events of Chapter 220, titled Bonds in Michigan, depict the apex of the conflict between Yoru and Chainsaw Man. This chapter is a masterclass in body horror, action choreography, and the degradation of the protagonist, Denji. Before the climactic battle ensues, Chapter 220 features scenes of profound dehumanization involving Denji. The chapter opens with Denji and Yoru arriving at a burnt-out soapland. Here, Denji laments his misplaced priorities, leading to a grotesque sequence where Yoru offers to amputate his penis. This scene is not merely for shock value. It is a continuation of the series' theme regarding Denji's sexual exploitation. Yoru's threat to remove his genitalia, followed by a sexual act that occurs after a brief argument with a knife, blurs the lines between intimacy, violence, and castration. It reinforces Denji's status as a commodity, a body to be used, modified, or pleasured at the whim of the horseman. This sexual violence serves as a prelude to the physical violence of the battle, linking the violation of the individual body to the violation of the world body. Following the soapland sequence, the team moves to a conveyor belt sushi restaurant named Death by Sushi, a setting that grimly foreshadows the consumption of the Death Devil. Here, Barem casually sits next to Denji. He offers to release Nayuta if Denji can save them from public safety. This interaction highlights the manipulative nature of the antagonists, who use Denji's family as leverage to force him into compliance, further eroding his agency. The battle choreography in Chapter 220 is specific and symbolic. Yoru does not simply fire weapons, she mimics them. She reaches out with both arms, pointing forefingers and thumbs, and mimics a machine gun, uttering the onomatopoeia rat-a-tat-tat-tat. This childish vocalization, juxtaposed with the devastation of the bullets ripping through the earth, emphasizes the infantile yet omnipotent nature of the War Devil. War is treated as a game by Yoru, a tantrum thrown by a god. To bolster her assault, Yoru summons the moray eel devil from hell. The design of this devil is grotesque. A body composed of coiled intestines, a fleshy head lined with protruding humanoid fingers, and a mouth running the entire length of its body with 2 sets of teeth. Despite this summon, Chainsaw Man's speed is incomprehensible. He sprints faster than the eye can perceive and slices the moray eel devil into segments before it can fully exit Hell's Door. The devil cries out a confused BOH as it dies. This sequence demonstrates the futility of Yoru's bonds against the raw, erasing power of Pochita. While Yoru relies on the sublimity of devils and external aid, Chainsaw Man is a solitary force of nature. As the battle rages, Yoru delivers a monologue that perverts the standard shonen protagonist arc. She claims that she has changed and grown since coming to Earth. She states that she has learned to depend on others, and that there is magnificence to be found in friends and family. However, she uses this realization to justify ordering countless devils to descend from hell and die for her. Her growth is merely the expansion of her ego to consume others for her own ambition, contrasting sharply with Denji's desire for genuine, non-transactional connection. While the manga depicts the grim reality of a deathless apocalypse, the broader Chainsaw Man franchise in late 2025 is dominated by the return of Reze, the bomb girl. The synchronicity between the movie release and the manga's nuclear plotline is the subject of intense industrial and narrative analysis. Released in September 2025 in Japan and October in North America, the Reze arc film has achieved significant commercial success. Critical reception has been overwhelmingly positive, praising the animation fidelity and the score by Kensuke Ushio, which is described as balancing elegiac piano pieces with guttural, glitch-inflected battle ballads. Reviews highlight specific sequences of extreme violence that rival the manga's intensity. One notable scene involves a character performing a 2-legged grapple on another before choking them to death, a sequence compared to the cold brutality of No Country for Old Men. This visceral depiction reinforces the danger Reze poses, reminding audiences of her lethality, just as the manga ramp up its own violence. The film places heavy emphasis on the town mouse versus country mouse fable, a conversation Denji and Reze share in the source material. Critics note that this theme is the thematic crux of the film, posing the question of whether it is better to live a boring, safe life or an exciting, dangerous one. This is painfully relevant to Denji's current status in the manga, where his country mouse dream of a normal life has been obliterated by his town mouse reality as Chainsaw Man. A prevailing and highly detailed theory in the community connects Reze directly to the resurfaced nuclear weapons plotline in the manga. The logic follows the brand synergy principle. The movie reintroduces Reze to the public consciousness, paving the way for her return to the manga as a pivotal player in the nuclear narrative. In the Chainsaw Man timeline, the Soviet Union never dissolved. Reze is explicitly a Soviet agent. Since the Gun Devil's fragments were held by the US and USSR, and the Tank Devil is likely Soviet affiliated, Reze's bomb hybrid nature places her adjacent to the nuclear weapons devil. Deep dive analysis into Russ's name reveals that Rezeda etymologically links to a flower name popular in the Kazan and Astrakhan Khanate, regions with Islamic influence within the Russian Empire and USSR. The manga cover depicting a young Reze in traditional dress supports the idea that she was indoctrinated from childhood. This backstory adds weight to the theory that she is not just a random agent, but a carefully cultivated vessel for the Soviet state's ultimate weapon. Fans theorize that the Bomb Devil is a lower tier derivative or a spark for the nuclear weapons devil. With the reinvention of nukes in the manga, Reze's power ceiling could be exponentially raised. Some speculate she might be revealed as the nuclear weapons devil itself, or the key to unlocking its full potential. If the US has reinvented nukes, the Soviet Union would be compelled to deploy their ultimate asset to maintain the balance of terror. Reze's return to the manga is predicted to occur immediately following the movie's release window, likely as a countermeasure to Yoru or a third-party agent in the apocalypse. The persistence of the USSR in the Chainsaw Man universe is a critical world-building element that supports Reze's return. Because Bachita ate the Nazi devil and World War II devil, the Cold War dynamic shifted. The USSR retained influence, and the proxy war nature of global conflict replaced open warfare. The ubiquity of Soviet surplus in the series is evidenced by Japanese public safety hunters using AK-style rifles. This detail hints at deep trade relationships or reliance on the Soviet bloc, providing the logistical framework for Reze to re-enter the story as an operative with deep connections to the current global power structure. Running parallel to the Death and War conflict is the subplot involving the Fire Devil and the Chainsaw Man Church, which explores the mutability of human identity and the horror of becoming part of a collective. The Fire Devil's contracts allow humans to transform into Chainsaw Man lookalikes. Research into the mechanics of this devil reveals that it functions like a spreading fire. As more people contract with it, the power grows and the transformation becomes more accurate to the idol, Chainsaw Man. The transformation is not merely physical. It represents a surrender of individuality to a collective hysteria. The fire here is metaphorical for the uncontrollable spread of ideology. The contractor does not transform into what they want, but rather into what the collective will dictate. Barem utilizes the Fire Devil to create chaos, aiming to trigger the apocalypse by swelling the fear of Chainsaw Man and war. By creating a legion of fake sawmen, he dilutes the hero brand of Denji, turning the symbol of rebellion into a symbol of mindless destruction. The Fire Devil arc reinforces the lore regarding hybrids like Denji, Reze, and Barem. They are functionally immortal as long as their trigger remains intact and they receive blood. This rule becomes crucial in the Deathless World scenario. In a world where normal humans cannot die but suffer eternally from their wounds, Hybrids occupy a unique theological niche. They are the only beings capable of true regeneration. While a human sliced in half by Yoru would lie in agony forever, a hybrid can drink blood and restore their body. This elevation of the hybrid to a godlike status creates a terrifying hierarchy in the New World Order, where Denji and his kind are the only ones who can maintain bodily integrity amidst the carnage. The only way to truly kill a hybrid is to destroy the trigger mechanism or completely cremate the body so there is nothing left to regenerate, a feat that is increasingly difficult in a world where entropy itself might be broken. By November 2025, Chainsaw Man has transformed into a multimedia singularity. The manga, in its Bonds and Michigan phase, is deconstructing the very concept of endings by erasing death, forcing its characters into a horrific eternity that mirrors the zombie existence of endless serialization. The consumption of the Death Devil by Pochita has stripped the world of its natural release valve, creating a hellscape where Yoru's war is the only remaining dynamic force. Simultaneously, the reinvention of nuclear weapons serves as a narrative device to repower the antagonists and escalate the stakes to planetary destruction. Into this volatile mix returns Reze, first cinematically and inevitably narratively. Her return is not merely fan service, but a structural necessity. As the bomb, she represents the tactical bridge between conventional warfare and the nuclear annihilation Yoru seeks to unleash. The brand synergy identified by analysts is, in fact, a coherent storytelling strategy, reminding the audience of the tragedy of the bomb girl just as the world stands on the precipice of a nuclear, deathless eternity. Ultimately, Part 2 of Chainsaw Man asks a terrifying question. In a world where you cannot die, and where your identity can be rewritten by fire or war, what does it mean to be saved? The answer, seemingly, lies in the chaotic, erasing maw of Chainsaw Man himself. If you thought a world without death was a nightmare, wait until you see what happens when you add fire to the mix. For the last year of serialization, we have been obsessing over the Chainsaw Man Church. We thought it was a cult. We thought it was a satire of fan culture. We thought Barem Bridge was just a creepy guy who really liked flamethrowers and making Denji miserable. But looking back at the ashes of Part 2, we missed the biggest clue of all. The Fire Devil wasn't trying to destroy the world. The Fire Devil was trying to evolve it. We know that Fami was pulling the strings, but why did she use fire? Why not plague? Why not pestilence? Because fire is the only thing that can change the shape of a soul. And in a world where you cannot die, your shape is the only thing that matters. This is the story of Fake Saw Man. The story of why Barem Bridge might actually be the smartest character in the series, and the terrifying realization that while we were worried about dying, a new primal fear has taken the throne. Ladies and gentlemen, death is gone. Long live the aging devil. Hello, and welcome back to AnimeAutopsy, your source for dissecting the rotting carcass of shonen manga to find the gold hidden in the guts. My name is AnimeAutopsy, and I'm currently aging at a rate of 1 gray hair per Fujimoto chapter. Today, we are continuing our massive deep dive into the Chainsaw Man apocalypse. In Part 1, we covered how Pochita ate death. In Part 2, we looked at Yoru's nuclear tantrum and the return of Reze. But now? Now we have to talk about the imposters. We have to talk about the Fake Saw Man mystery that has plagued us since the Falling Devil arc. We have to talk about why thousands of people turned into Chainsaw Man zombies. And we have to address the elephant in the room, or rather, the wrinkly, decrepit old man in the room, the aging devil. If you think immortality is a gift, this video is going to change your mind brain. But before we succumb to the ravages of time, I have a contract for you. If you subscribe to the channel right now, I will personally ensure that the aging devil skips you this year. You'll stay young, fresh, and full of collagen. Unlike Denji, who is currently, well, let's just say he's having a bad day. So smash that subscribe button like it's a mirror showing your first wrinkle. Let's solve the mystery of Fake Saw Man. Who is he? Is he Segi Ikoku? Is he the Justice Devil? Is he a hallucination? For the longest time, we thought Fake Saw Man was a specific person. We looked at jaw lines. We looked at heights. We compared ear shapes back when ears existed. But chapter 146 changed everything. Barem revealed that the Justice Devil contracts were actually contracts with the Fire Devil. The Fire Devil has the power of transformation. Fire spreads. That's the logic. If you burn wood, it turns into ash. It transforms. If you make a contract with fire, you transform into what you desire. Or rather, what the collective desires. The church members wanted to be Chainsaw Man. They wanted to be heroes. So the Fire Devil turned them into cheap, mass-produced knockoffs. But there was one fake Saw Man who was different. The one who saved Denji and Asa from the falling devil. The one who spoke eloquently. The one who said, "I am the true Chainsaw Man." It was right there. He wasn't a fake in the sense of a disguise. He was the perfect copy. My theory? This specific fake Saw Man is Segi Ikoku. Why? His name literally means justice. He's the only member of the Devil Hunter Club who actually looks like he could throw a punch. And notice the design of Fake Saw Man's arms. They look like they have surgical implants or armored plating. Segi wears a modified uniform with similar padding. But here's the twist. Segi didn't turn into Fake Saw Man because he wanted to be a hero. He turned into Fake Saw Man because he worshipped Denji. The Fire Devil grants the form of your desire. Segi desired to be the symbol of justice, and in doing so, he became a monster. But why did Fami want this? Why create an army of fake saws? Because she knew Pochita was going to eat her. If death is gone, the world fills up with life, too much life. The Fire Devil's zombies are a way to manage that life. If you can't die, you can at least be repurposed. You can be turned into fuel. Fami was building a recycling plant for humanity. Now, let's talk about Barem Bridge. This guy, the flamethrower hybrid. The man with the craziest eyes in manga history. We all hated him when he burned Denji's house. We hated him when he threatened Nayuta. But Barem is the only one who actually told us the truth. In chapter 151, he says, "I want to see the world burn so that something new can rise from the ashes." Barem knew about the Deathless World. He knew Yoru's plan. And he realized something profound. In a world without death, stagnation is the enemy. If nothing dies, nothing changes. The old refuse to leave. The young cannot take over. The world becomes a nursing home run by tyrants. Fire is the element of change. It is violent, yes, but it clears the forest floor so new trees can grow. Barem's goal wasn't just chaos. It was evolution. He wanted to force humanity to transform, literally, via the Fire Devil, so they could survive the age of devils that death was bringing. Think about it. Normal humans in the current manga timeline, they are screwed. They are getting sliced in half by Yoru, falling off buildings and suffering eternally. But the chainsaw zombies, the fire contractors, they are durable. They are strong. They are a new species. Barem wasn't trying to kill Denji. He was trying to show him that humanity needs to become monsters to survive this new reality. And this recontextualizes his obsession with Denji. He worships Chainsaw Man because Chainsaw Man is the ultimate agent of change. Chainsaw Man eats the past to make way for the future. Barem is just a fanboy who took the burn it all down metaphor way too literally. But while fire and war are fighting over the surface, a new horror has emerged from the depths of the primal fears. With death gone, who sits at the top of the food chain? Is it darkness? No. Darkness is scary, but you can turn on a light. Is it fallen? No. You can learn to fly, or just not look down. The new king of terror is the aging devil. Chapter 2, 121 is setting this up perfectly. In a world where you cannot die, you still age. Imagine that. You get to 80, then 90, then 100. Your body fails. Your mind rots. Your bones turn to dust. But you cannot leave. You are trapped in a decaying prison of flesh forever. The aging devil just got a massive promotion. He went from being a fear people have, I don't want to get wrinkles, to the ultimate fear. I don't want to be a conscious pile of dust for eternity. This is the fate worse than extinction that Yoru hinted at. Yoru wants to create endless war, but endless war in a deathless world means endless injury. The aging devil wants to ensure that everyone lives long enough to suffer. And here's the craziest part. The public safety devil hunters? They are likely contracting with the aging devil. Why? Because if you offer the aging devil a sacrifice, maybe your youth, maybe your senses, he might grant you the power to stop time for yourself, to stay young while everyone else rots. This creates a new class divide. The immortals who stay young and the eternals who rot forever. Denji is a hybrid. He doesn't age. Reze is a hybrid. She doesn't age. Kwangxi is a hybrid. She doesn't age. The hybrids are the new gods of this world, and everyone else is just waiting to turn into dust. This brings us to the Darkness Devil. Remember him? The guy who traumatized us in the International Assassins arc? The guy who speaks in frog noises and severed arms? We haven't seen him in part 2 yet, but he has to be watching. The primal fears of darkness, falling, aging, and death are a family, or at least a peer group. With death gone, the balance is broken. Darkness represents the unknown. But if death is gone, the biggest unknown, what happens after we die, is solved. The answer is nothing happens. You stay here. This actually weakens the Darkness Devil. Without the mystery of death, the dark isn't as scary. It's just dark. So, darkness is going to be pissed. I predict, then mark these words, clip this for the future, that the Darkness Devil will descend to Earth, not to kill Denji, but to hunt Pochita. Darkness needs death to exist. Without death, the fear of the dark loses its teeth. We are going to see a kaiju battle between Black Chainsaw Man and the Darkness Devil. Erasure versus the Void. And frankly, I don't know who wins that. Pochita ate a nuke, but darkness has the power of frog prayer. It's a toss-up. And finally, we have to talk about the Blood Devil, the contract. Come find me. Make me power again. Denji's entire motivation subconsciously has been to fulfill this promise. But there's a massive metaphysical problem now. Devils die in hell to be born on earth. Devils die on earth to be born in hell. If the concept of death is erased, devils can no longer die. If the Blood Devil is currently in hell, she is stuck there. She cannot die to be reborn on earth. If she is currently on earth, she cannot die to go back to hell if she needs a reset. The cycle of reincarnation is broken. The elevator is stuck between floors. This means Denji cannot find power. Not unless he physically goes to hell again and drags her out. But even if he does, she won't be power. She will be the blood devil, and she won't be able to die. This is the ultimate tragedy Fujimoto has set up. Denji might find the blood devil. He might even befriend her. But he can never restore the cycle. He can never give her the humanity of mortality. She will be an eternal monster, just like him. Unless the blood concept has a loophole. Blood is life. Blood is circulation. Maybe the blood devil is the key to circulating the concept of death back into the system. If Pochita eats the blood devil, does he erase life? No. That's too simple. But maybe if the blood devil eats Pochita, she can extract the death devil from his stomach. A blood transfusion for the universe. We are looking at a world that has fundamentally broken. Fire is rewriting humanity's DNA. Aging is torturing the population. Darkness is losing its power. And the blood devil is trapped in a cosmic waiting room. The pole shift has happened. The magnets have flipped. The villains, like Barem and Yoru, are trying to break the stasis. The heroes at public safety are trying to maintain it. And Denji? Denji is just trying to figure out why his chainsaw keeps revving when he looks at a sushi conveyor belt. This is the age of devils. Not an invasion, but a permanent residence. And the landlord is a dog with a chainsaw on his face. I've been AnimeAutopsy. This has been part 3 of our descent into the madness of a deathless world. In part 4, we are going to tackle the Nostradamus prophecy line by line, dissect the Soviet Union's role in this alternate history, and figure out exactly why Pochita crying sounds like a chainsaw engine. Don't forget to subscribe, or I'll tell the aging devil to speed up your hairline recession. See you in the next one. Welcome back. I've compiled another massive research dossier to explain the architecture of this apocalypse. We need to look at the narrative infrastructure of the Chainsaw Man universe, which operates on a unique intersection of alternate history, metaphysical determinism, and apocalyptic prophecy. Unlike traditional speculative fiction where the apocalypse is a sudden, singular event, this continuum presents the end of days as a procedural, bureaucratic, and highly prophesied transition known as the Nostradamus prophecy of July 1999. This report provides an exhaustive examination of the terminal phase of this timeline, analyzing the intricate geopolitical landscape dominated by a surviving Soviet Union, the ontological mechanics of the deathless world proposed by the war devil, and the exegesis of the cryptic prophetic texts guiding these events. At the core of this analysis is the Great King of Terror, an entity whose arrival is scheduled with terrifying precision. However, to understand the terror, one must first understand the world it threatens, a world where the Cold War never ended, where nuclear weapons were consumed by a devil only to be reinvented, and where the fear of war is actively manipulated to reshape the metaphysical hierarchy. This report synthesizes historical data, demonological theory, and geopolitical observation to construct a predictive model for the events of July 1999. Furthermore, we will engage in a meta-analytical review of how such apocalyptic narratives are disseminated within the spoiler economy of digital media, contrasting the prophetic certainty of Nostradamus with the speculative uncertainty of content creators. In our primary historical timeline, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics dissolved in December 1991, creating a unipolar geopolitical order dominated by the United States. In the Chainsaw Man timeline, the map of 1999 presents a radically different reality. The Soviet Union remains a dominant, cohesive superpower, This survival is not merely a cosmetic alteration of the setting, but a fundamental consequence of the metaphysical interventions of the Chainsaw Devil. The mechanism of this survival is rooted in the erasure of the Nazi devil and the World War II devil. While the physical events of the 1940s war occurred, the specific conceptual trauma and the narrative of World War II were eaten by Pochita. This consumption likely removed the socio-political scarring that defined the post-war Soviet identity. Without the devastation of the Great Patriotic War serving as a demographic and economic anchor, and without the subsequent creation of NATO as a direct counterbalance to a specifically Nazi-free Europe, the pressures that historically fractured the Soviet bloc were alleviated. The timeline suggests that the Cold War persisted not as an ideological battle of capitalism versus communism, but as a resource war over devil contracts. A critical divergence in this timeline is the absence of the nuclear arms race during the pivotal decades of the Cold War. Until the recent resurgence of the war devil, nuclear weapons did not exist in the collective consciousness, having been consumed by the chainsaw devil. In standard history, the economic strain of maintaining nuclear parity with the United States was a primary driver of Soviet collapse. In this universe, that strain was removed. Instead, the global arms race pivoted toward the accumulation of gun devil flesh. Following the gun devil's global attack, which lasted only 5 minutes yet claimed millions of lives, the creature's body burned away and scattered. These fragments became the new fissile material of global hegemony. The Soviet Union, the United States, and China engaged in a covert war to collect these pieces, as holding a larger percentage of the gun devil equated to greater military leverage. This gun economy favored the strictly controlled, militarized state apparatus of the USSR, allowing it to project power without the economic liberalization that doomed its real-world counterpart. The gun devil fragments act as a stabilizing agent for the regime. They are a deterrent that prevents direct invasion, freezing 1999 borders in a state of high-tension stasis. The Soviet Union's approach to metaphysical warfare differs remarkably from the Japanese public safety model. While Japan employs contracted civilians and fiends, the USSR appears to operate dedicated human weapon programs aimed at creating hybrids, fusions of human and devil that retain human consciousness. The prime exemplar of this program is Reze, the bomb girl. Reze's existence implies a ruthlessly utilitarian biometaphysical complex within the Soviet state. She was not merely recruited, she was raised and conditioned in a military facility, designated as a guinea pig for the state's ambitions. Her infiltration of Japan to capture the chainsaw heart demonstrates a proactive Soviet foreign policy that seeks to monopolize the ultimate power of erasure. Culturally, Reze represents the diversity of the Soviet sphere. Speculation regarding her ethnicity ranges from Russian to Kazakh or Yakut, reflecting the vast, multi-ethnic composition of the USSR that is often flattened in Western depictions. The Russian song she sings adds a layer of tragic dissonance to her character. The lyrics, intertwined with themes of longing and duality, mirror her own split existence as a weapon of the state and a young woman seeking intimacy. This cultural artifact suggests that, despite the militarization of society, the human desire for connection persists beneath the conditioning, a vulnerability the state likely views as a defect. The most alarming geopolitical development in 1999 is the return of nuclear capability. As the war devil, Yoru, regains power, the conceptual erasure binding nuclear weapons weakens. Snippets indicate that while the devil was eaten, scientific principles underpinning atomic fission are discoverable constants of the universe. If we took all the science books and burnt them, in 1,000 years, they would be back. The resurgence of warfare has prompted nations, specifically the United States and the USSR, to reinvent nuclear weaponry. This reintegration of nuclear physics into a world already saturated with devils creates a volatile compound. The Soviet Union, holding both gun devil assets and now potentially regaining nuclear capacity, stands on the precipice of becoming a hyperpower, unless the internal instability caused by the war devil's harvesting of these assets collapses the regime from within. The engine driving the events of July 1999 is Quatrain X.72 of Nostradamus. Within the Chainsaw Man diegesis, this is treated not as poetic metaphor, but as a literal schedule of operations. The text reads, "The year 1999, 7 months. From the sky will come a great king of terror, to resuscitate the great king of Angulmois, before and after Mars reigns by good luck." This prophecy outlines 3 distinct entities: the great king of terror, the catalyst of the apocalypse; the great king of Angulmois, the entity being revived or reacted to; and Mars, the entity that benefits and reigns amidst the chaos. The consensus among researchers, and implied by the narrative trajectory, is that the king of terror corresponds to the death devil. As the eldest of the 4 horsemen, death represents the ultimate cessation. The prophecy states this king comes from the sky, a descriptor that aligns with the arrival of primal fears like the falling devil, who descend from the abstract heights of hell, or the sky itself to enact their will. The terror is existential. Unlike the gun devil, which causes physical destruction, the death devil embodies the fear of the end of self. Its arrival in July 1999 is the singular event that all other major powers, FAMI, Yoru, and public safety, are orienting around. They are not trying to prevent the arrival. They are preparing to survive or exploit it. The identity of the king of Angulmois is the subject of intense hermeneutic debate. Popular culture often interprets Angulmois as an anagram for Mongoles or Mongols, leading to theories about the resurrection of Genghis Khan. Within the logic of Chainsaw Man, Genghis Khan, a historical figure of immense conquest, could be an avatar or previous incarnation of the control devil. If the prophecy predicts the resuscitation of the Mongol king, it might refer to Nayuta regaining the memories or power of her previous conquests. However, more rigorous historical analysis suggests Angulmois refers to the French region of Angulmois, and the king is Francis I, who was captured and resuscitated or restored to health in 1525. This interpretation changes the flavor of the prophecy from one of invasion to one of restoration or return. In the Chainsaw Man context, this supports the idea that the King of Terror arrives to revive something that was dormant or imprisoned, perhaps the concept of life itself, or a primal fear, or acts as a counterbalance to death. A compelling synthesis suggests that if the King of Terror is death, the entity it resuscitates is its opposite. Snippets link Chainsaw Man to the sound of a chainsaw used in childbirth, a metaphor for the painful, bloody entry of life into the world. Thus, the prophecy might predict a confrontation where death forces life, or Pochita, to awaken fully, or vice versa. The final line serves as the tactical blueprint for Yoru. Mars is the Roman god of war. The prophecy explicitly states that war will reign happily or by good fortune before and after the arrival of the King of Terror. This explains Yoru's counterintuitive behavior. She does not seek to save humanity from the King of Terror. She seeks to create a world where the terror is defeated, leaving only war. A world without death is a world of eternal combat. Yoru interprets Mars reigns happily as a mandate to maximize global conflict. By creating a constant world war where nobody can die forever, she achieves the ultimate victory for her concept. War becomes a permanent state of being, unhindered by the release of death. Yoru's power is predicated on a psychological transaction. She turns what is hers into weapons, and the strength of the weapon is proportional to the guilt she feels in creating it. This mechanic is distinct from other devils who rely on simple fear. Yoru requires an internal emotional sacrifice. This system explains her relationship with Asamitaka. By inhabiting a human with a high capacity for guilt and moral rigidness, Yoru gains access to a potent fuel source. However, to challenge the King of Terror, Yoru requires guilt on a geopolitical scale. In a moment of strategic brilliance and emotional monstrosity, Yoru reclaims her children, the Gun Devil and the Tank Devil, and transforms them into gauntlets. This act is multi-layered. It establishes that war is the progenitor of specific weapons. The gun and tank are subordinate to the concept of war. By sacrificing her own children, Yoru generates immense guilt, far surpassing any weapon created from an inanimate object. This guilt maximizes the power of the gauntlets. The gun gauntlet grants Yoru the hypersonic speed and range devastation of the Gun Devil. The tank gauntlet presumably offers impenetrable defense and heavy artillery power. This transformation strips the US and USSR of their primary deterrents, destabilizing the world order precisely as the prophecy demands. The gauntlet theory posits that Yoru intends to subsume all weapon hybrids into her personal arsenal. She has claimed gun and tank. The next logical targets are bomb, katana, and flamethrower. Of these, Reze is the most critical. With the reinvention of nuclear science, Reze, the bomb devil hybrid, is theorized to evolve into the nuclear bomb devil. If Yoru acquires a nuclear gauntlet, she would possess the power to permanently irradiate the battlefield, ensuring that Mars reigns over a wasteland. This evolution would represent the ultimate escalation, from conventional war to existential war, mirroring the real-world trajectory of the 20th century that the Chainsaw Man universe largely avoided until now. To understand the adversary of the prophecy, we must reevaluate Pochita. Why a chainsaw? Historical analysis provided in the research reveals that chainsaws were originally invented to aid in childbirth, specifically symphysiotomy. This gruesome historical fact recontextualizes Chainsaw Man not as a tool of destruction, but as a violent tool of bringing life into the world. This aligns with the observation that devils hear the rev of a chainsaw before being reborn in the human world. Pochita is the gatekeeper of birth. He cuts the cord between hell and earth. This makes him the conceptual opposite of the death devil. If death is the end, Chainsaw Man is the violent, messy beginning. Snippet proposes that Pochita's true nature might be linked to autophobia, the fear of isolation or separation. His desire for a hug, his bond with Denji, and his power to erase names all point to a being defined by connection and disconnection. The chainsaw cuts things apart. It separates. If Pochita represents the fear of separation, his power to eat a devil is the ultimate enforced separation, removing a concept from the collective mind so completely that it can never be reconnected to reality. This makes his battle with Yoru, who seeks to connect things into weapons, and Death, who connects all things to a final end, thematically resonant. The ultimate objective of the War Devil, and potentially the unintended consequence of defeating the Death Devil, is the creation of a deathless world. Philosophical analysis of immortality in fiction suggests this outcome is far from utopian. The primary consequence is the infinite labor problem. Without the deadline of death, urgency evaporates. In a deathless world, human endeavor loses its scarcity value. Culture, which is often a reaction to mortality, would stagnate. The gold of life turns to lead. However, Yoru's vision is specific. She does not want a deathless world of leisure. She wants a deathless world of war. Imagine a battlefield where soldiers are dismembered, eviscerated, and burned, yet cannot die. Consciousness persists in mangled flesh. Regeneration might occur, only for the body to be destroyed again. This is the true horror of Mars reigning happily. It is a closed loop of suffering. This scenario also enables the famine devil. A population that cannot die continues to consume resources. Exponential population growth in a finite world leads to absolute scarcity. Famine would reign alongside war in a crowded, starving, bleeding world that is denied the mercy of the void. Finally, the deathless world might trigger a regression to the age of devils. If humans are reduced to eternal husks, the fear economy collapses or shifts. Primal fears like darkness, who have never known death, would find this environment native. The removal of death might dissolve the barrier between earth and hell, turning the human world into a chaotic playground for the primals, where the laws of physics are subservient to the laws of fear. While the characters within Chainsaw Man consult Nostradamus, the readers of the series consult a different class of prophet, the theory YouTuber. This report includes a meta-analysis of the spoiler economy exemplified by channels like Grand Line Review. These creators operate on a mechanism of clickbait prophecy. Titles like The True Identity of the Death Devil or Reze Returns confirmed function similarly to Quatrain X.72. They create a sense of inevitable future that drives engagement. The constant call to subscribe acts as a pact, similar to a devil contract. Give me your attention and I will give you knowledge. Spoiler etiquette mirrors the in-universe tension between public safety, trying to contain knowledge of the prophecy, and the devils who broadcast their terror. The spoiler is a form of information hazard. Once seen, it cannot be unseen, erasing the experience of the now, much like Pochita erases the past. The fandom's collective intelligence acts as a distributed processing network, deciphering Fujimoto's foreshadowing often faster than the narrative reveals it. However, this also creates a feedback loop where fan theories become so prevalent they confuse the actual text. Understanding Chainsaw Man requires navigating both the text of the manga and the paratext of the community theories. The Part 4 analysis of the Chainsaw Man timeline reveals a convergence of terrifying vectors. Geopolitically, the Soviet Union, stripped of its gun devil deterrent by Yoru, is likely to unleash its human weapon assets in a desperate bid for survival, triggering the reinvention of nuclear war. Prophetically, the Nostradamus prophecy is on schedule. The Death Devil will descend to challenge the forces of life. Ontologically, Yoru is manipulating this apocalypse to engineer a deathless world where war is eternal. The happy reign of Mars predicted by Nostradamus is not a victory for humanity, but a transformation of the human condition into fuel for an eternal engine of conflict. As July 1999 approaches, the distinction between saving the world and ending it becomes irrelevant. The only question remaining is which devil will hold the leash of the surviving population, the one that starves them, the one that wars with them, or the one that controls them. We need to talk about the map. No, not the map of the Tokyo subway system where Denji is currently having a panic attack. I mean the world map. Have you noticed that it looks wrong? In our timeline, the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. It shattered, it broke. But in Chainsaw Man, it is 1999. And the Soviet Union isn't just alive. It is the strongest superpower on the planet. Why? Because Pochita ate the Nazi devil and the World War II devil. He erased the events that bankrupt the Soviet economy. He erased the ideological defeat of communism. And in doing so, he created a timeline where the Cold War never ended. It just got weirder. And who is the ultimate weapon of the superpowered Soviet Union? It's not a tank. It's not a gun. It is a girl who loves explosive cinematics, skinny dipping, and biting tongues. Reze. The Reze Arc movie just dropped. The hype is real. But everyone is asking, when will she return to the manga? I am here to tell you that she has to return. Not because of fan service. Not because of brand synergy. Although, let's be real, Mappa loves money. She has to return because Yoru just reinvented nuclear weapons. And Reze? Reze is the trigger. This is the theory of why the bomb girl is actually the nuclear bomb girl. Why the gun devil was just a distraction. And why the happy reign of Mars predicted by Nostradamus is going to be a radioactive nightmare. Hello, and welcome back to AnimeAutopsy, where we dissect the plot holes until they look like plot canyons. My name is AnimeAutopsy, and I am currently radiating pure, unfiltered copium, waiting for my favorite bomb girl to come back from the war. Today, we are entering part 5 of our apocalyptic deep dive. We've covered death, we've covered life, we've covered the wrinkly horror of the aging devil. But now, we have to look at the politics of the end of the world. We're going to break down Quatrain X.72 of the Nostradamus prophecy, figure out why Yoru sacrificed her own children, and explain why Reze might be the most dangerous character in part 2. And listen, if you don't subscribe right now, I will personally tell the Soviet Union that you are hiding the gun devil in your basement. They will send a hybrid after you. And unlike Reze, they probably won't take you on a date first. So smash that subscribe button like it's a button that launches the nukes. Let's start with the Reze anomaly. Reze is a hybrid, the bomb hybrid. She was raised in a secret Soviet facility. She was a guinea pig. But here's the thing. In a world where nuclear weapons were eaten by Pochita, what kind of bomb is she? In part 1, she was just bomb. Dynamite. C4. Explosions. But in part 2, chapter 209, Yoru does the impossible. She reinvents nuclear weapons. The manga explicitly tells us that while Pochita ate the devil, the scientific concept of fission remained. America just remembered how to build them. Now, connect the dots. If nuclear weapons are back, does the bomb devil get an upgrade? If Reze is the embodiment of explosions, and the biggest explosion possible just came back into existence, Reze just went from being a tactical nuke to a Tsar Bomba. The theory is this. Reze was never just the bomb hybrid. She was a vessel prepared for the return of nukes. The Soviet Union knew about the erasure. They knew Pochita ate the nuke devil. And they kept Reze, a child soldier, a perfect weapon, ready for the day the concept returned. Why else would they send her to capture Pochita's heart in part 1? Because she is the only one who can withstand the radiation of the hero of hell. Look at her design. The pin in her neck, it looks like a grenade pin, sure, but it also looks like a safety key. The movie Reze Arc emphasized her tragedy. The town mouse versus country mouse theme. Denji wanted to be the country mouse or peace. Reze forced him to be the town mouse or danger. Now, in part 2, Denji has no peace. He is the ultimate town mouse. Reze returning now isn't a romance plot. It's a thematic necessity. She represents the escalation of war. She represents the moment conventional warfare becomes nuclear annihilation. Speaking of escalation, let's talk about Yoru's gauntlets. This was one of the hardest scenes to read in part 2. Yoru sacrificing the gun devil and tank devil. She called them her children, and then she turned them into arms. This confirms something huge about the horsemen. They view other devils as extensions of themselves. War is guns. War is tanks. By sacrificing them, Yoru wasn't killing them. She was reabsorbing them. She was consolidating her portfolio. She still has 2 legs, doesn't she? Or maybe a head. She needs more weapons to fight Black Chainsaw Man. She has the gun for range. She has the tank for defense. What is she missing? Area of effect. She needs the nuke. If Reze shows up, Yoru isn't going to team up with her. Yoru is going to try to turn her into a weapon. Imagine Yoru with a nuclear bomb sword or a Reze grenade. That is the King of Terror level threat we are looking at.
Reze isn't
Now,
safe.
we have to decode
She's
the
walking
prophecy.
into a lion's den.
In the year
where the lion is
1999,
also her
7
mother.
months.
War gave birth
From
to
the sky will come a great
war
king of
wants her
terror
baby back.
to resuscitate the great king of Angulmois. Before and after Mars reigns happily. We focused so much on the king of terror being death. But look at the last line. Mars reigns happily. Mars equals the Roman god of war. Mars equals Yoru. The prophecy doesn't say the world ends. It says war wins. And it says she reigns happily. What makes the war devil happy? Conflict. But not just any conflict. Eternal conflict. This ties back to the deathless world we talked about in part 1. If death is gone, humans cannot die. If humans cannot die, war never ends. Soldiers fight, get blown apart, regenerate, and fight again. It is the Valhalla scenario, but without the mead and the Valkyries. Just the pain. Yoru's goal isn't to kill Pochita. It is to use Pochita to maintain this state. She wants a world where nuclear bombs can go off and people survive it. Imagine the horror of that. A nuclear wasteland where the population is melted, radiated, and broken, but alive. That is Yoru's happy ending. That is the reign of Mars. In Angulmois, historically some people think it means Mongols, but in French, it refers to a region. And do you know what happened in that region? A king was restored. The prophecy says the king of terror comes to resuscitate the king of Angulmois. If terror is death, and she was eaten, maybe the king of Angulmois is actually Pochita. He was dormant as Denji's heart. He was dead. Death's arrival forced him to wake up, to resuscitate. The prophecy predicted a Black Chainsaw Man's return, not as a savior, but as a reaction. This brings us back to Barem Bridge, the man who wants to burn the world. In part 3, we called him an agent of evolution. But now, looking at the Mars reigns prophecy, Barem looks even smarter. Barem serves Fami. Fami wants to control Yoru. Fami's plan was to starve Yoru to control her. But Barem seems to be accelerating Yoru's power. Why? Because Barem knows that fire thrives in war. Mars reigns happily means fire burns forever. Barem isn't just a henchman. He is a priest. He worships the chaos. And he knows something about Denji that we all forgot. Denji is a hybrid. He is immortal. Barem is a hybrid. He is immortal. Reze is a hybrid. She is immortal. The reign of Mars is a world built for hybrids. Normal humans are cattle. They are fuel. But hybrids? They are the new gods. Barem isn't trying to destroy public safety. He's trying to build Olympus, and he wants Denji to sit on the throne with him. That's why he burned Denji's house. He was severing Denji's ties to humanity. You are not one of them, Denji. You are one of us. Stop playing house with the dogs and the little sister. Be a god. So the board is set. The Soviet Union is ready to unleash their nuclear asset. Yoru is building a collection of devil weapon limbs. Nostradamus predicted a world of eternal radioactive war. And Barem is trying to gaslight Denji into becoming the king of the ashes. It's a mess, a beautiful, horrifying mess. And the only thing standing between us and this happy reign of Mars is a depressed teenager who just wants to be a chainsaw man for the ladies. But wait, we've missed one player. One very quiet, very nervous player who has a contract with a secret devil. Kobani. She survived part 1. She survived the Darkness Devil. She survived Makima. Is she just lucky? Or is she contracted with the one thing that can stop a prophecy? Is Kobani contracted with the unknown devil? Or maybe the plot armor devil? We are going to dive into the Kobani conspiracy and the truth about the primal fear of the unknown in part 6. Because if anyone is going to accidentally save the world while trying to buy a car, it is her. But before we wrap up, we have one final dossier to review. This is the theological architecture of the infernal threshold. We need to talk about hell. The cosmological structure of the Chainsaw Man universe operates not merely as a backdrop for supernatural conflict, but as a sophisticated semiotic system that externalizes the collective human unconscious. Central to this metaphysical architecture is the visualization of hell, which deviates significantly from Dantesque interpretations of fire and brimstone, presenting instead as an infinite surrealist pastoral landscape dominated by the motif of the door. This distinct imagery suggests a complex relationship between the terrestrial plane and the infernal, governed by rules of transition, repression, and birth. The recurring visual of doors, manifesting most prominently in the sky of hell, and within the protagonist Denji's subconscious serves as the primary interface between dimensions. Analytical discourse surrounding this imagery posits a functional similarity to the monster's inking mechanic, where doors act as direct, targeted conduits between the dimension of fear and the dimension of the fear-havers. However, the implications of this mechanism extend beyond simple travel. The sky of doors in hell implies a comprehensive catalog of potential incursions, where every door represents a specific fear waiting to be birthed into the human world. This birth canal theory is reinforced by the visual language used during the Darkness Devil's introduction and the journey to hell. The doors are not static. They are the sky of that world, suggesting that for devils, the act of dying on earth and returning to hell is a traversal through these thresholds. The doors represent the liminal space between concept and reality. When humanity develops a new fear, a new door potentially manifests, linking the abstract dread to a physical avatar. Furthermore, the door carries a heavy psychoanalytic weight within the narrative S microcosm. For Denji, the recurring door in his dreams represents the repression of trauma, specifically the patricidal act committed in his childhood. Fujimoto establishes a macro-micro parallel here. Just as Denji suppresses the memory of his original sin behind a mental door to maintain his sanity, humanity is separated from the raw, maddening reality of its primal fears by the dimensional doors in the sky. The presence of these doors suggests that hell is a manifestation of what humanity locks away. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the dark, and the fear of a death are all rooms in the collective psyche that must remain shut for civilization to function. When a door opens, it is not just an invasion, it is a psychological breach, a failure of the collective repression mechanism. Within this framework of doors and births, the nature of the chainsaw devil Pochita requires a radical reevaluation. A prevailing theoretical framework connects Pochita as ability concept erasure, not to destruction, but to a corrupted form of unbirthing. This is often formalized as the birth devil hypothesis. This theory resolves the tension between Pochita's terrifying power and his seemingly benevolent, dog-like form. The birth devil would inherently rival the death devil in power, as birth is the primal onset of all fear. By erasing a concept, Pochita essentially revokes its birth. This aligns with the observation that Pochita's erasure power functions as a retroactive prevention of existence. The hero of Hell title thus takes on a soteriological quality. Pochita saves humanity not by fighting evil, but by preventing the birth of the concepts that torment them, acting as a cosmic gatekeeper who can seal the doors of hell permanently. We also need to look at the primal fears. The darkness devil serves as the primary case study for this ontological category, representing an ancient, instinctual terror that predates humanity's complex social anxieties. One of the most visually arresting and symbolically dense images in the Chainsaw Man corpus is the Darkness Devil's entrance, heralded by a path of bisected astronauts with their hands clasped in prayer. This imagery is not random surrealism, but a calculated deconstruction of human hubris. The image directly references the tragic history of space exploration, specifically invoking the Apollo 1 crew, or the Soyuz 11 cosmonauts. The number of astronauts depicted, often counted as 11, correlates disturbingly with the number of spacefarers who had died in the line of duty up to the timeline of the series. Symbolically, astronauts represent the zenith of human scientific achievement, the urge to explore and the desire to illuminate the unknown darkness of space. Their presence in hell, bisected and forced into a posture of religious submission, serves as a grotesque mockery of this ambition. It suggests that the darkness devil views human scientific advancement as trivial. No matter how far humanity advances technocratically, or how much light they attempt to cast into the void, the darkness remains absolute and unconquerable. The prayer gesture indicates a forced regression from scientific confidence to primal superstition. In the face of the ultimate dark, even the most rational explorers are reduced to begging for mercy. A significant and often underanalyzed subplot involves the specific group of devils and fiends who comprise the followers of Chainsaw Man. Makima refers to them explicitly as such, and their names correspond directly to the Christian angelic hierarchy, or angelology. This confirms that Fujimoto utilizes Gnostic and Judeo-Christian theology to structure the devil society, creating an inverted host where devils occupy the seats of angels. If we map the angelic hierarchy to the followers, we see clear parallels. The seraphim, or burning ones, are represented by the insectoid devil in Makima's squad. The cherubim, or guardians, are represented by Beam, the shark fiend. Beam's name is phonetically close to cherubim, and he is the most loyal follower, possessing the ability to swim through solid matter, mirroring the omnipresence of guardian spirits. The thrones, or wheels, are represented by Galgali, the violence fiend. Galgali retains his human intelligence and pacifist nature, despite being the violence fiend, an irony that reflects the justice of the thrones. The dominions are represented by the four-eared fiend, the virtues by the headless fiend, the powers by power, the blood fiend. Her name is not merely a noun, but a specific rank. The principalities by Princey, the spider devil, and the angels by the angel devil. Among these followers, Beam displays an anomalous ability to remember the details of the chainsaw devil's exploits in hell. While standard devil reincarnation involves a memory wipe, Beam explicitly recalls Pochita's tactics. The cherubim's status provides a theological explanation for this anomaly. As cherubim are the guardians closest to God, or Pochita, Beam's proximity to the hero of hell may have granted him special ontological privileges or a stronger spiritual bond that transcends the memory wipe of death. Finally, we have Kobeni Higashiyama. Her character is defined by a paradox. She is portrayed as incompetent, cowardly, and perpetually unlucky, yet she survives encounters that kill significantly more powerful devil hunters. Her survival rate is 100% in situations where it should be 0. This statistical anomaly, combined with her refusal to name her contracted devil, has spawned a diverse range of theories. A prevalent framework posits that Kobeni is contracted with the misfortune devil. The terms of this contract are hypothesized to be an exchange of daily happiness and dignity for absolute combat survival. This creates a feedback loop of suffering. The devil ensures Kobeni survives lethal encounters precisely so she can continue to suffer in her daily life. This turns her into a perpetual motion machine of misery, fueled by her own miraculous survival. Kobeni explicitly states her devil is a secret. While initially interpreted as a deflection, literal interpretations suggest she could be contracted with the secret devil. A secret devil would derive power from the withholding of information. Therefore, the terms of the contract would dictate that as long as Kobeni keeps the identity of the devil a secret, she gains access to immense power or protection. This explains her erratic power spikes. When she is silent and secretive, she is capable of superhuman feats. When she is vocal and exposed, she is weak. A minority, but statistically significant theory links Kobeni to the Death Devil, the final and most feared of the four horsemen. Evidence cited includes her physical character design, specifically the multiple moles on her face, which parallel the beauty marks found on Makima, Yoru, and Fami. The argument posits that the Death Devil, like her sisters, is living among humanity incognito. Kobeni's proximity to death without ever dying is not luck, but an attribute of her nature. She is the eye of the storm. Death happens around her, but never to her. The esoteric lore of Chainsaw Man reveals a universe governed by strict but surreal metaphysical laws. From the angelic hierarchy that dictates the retinue of the Chainsaw Devil to the door-filled skies of hell that represent the trauma of birth and the repression of the unknown, Fujimoto constructs a cosmology that is deeply cynical yet internally consistent. The unresolved mysteries of Kobeni's contract, the biological resilience of the Blood Devil, and the looming threat of a deathless reality suggest that the series is moving toward a deconstruction of existence itself. The hero of hell is not a savior who defeats evil, but a cosmic editor who must decide whether death is a curse to be eaten or a mercy that must be protected at all costs. The final battle will likely not be for survival, but for the right to die. I've been AnimeAutopsy. This has been part 5. If you enjoyed this descent into geopolitical madness, leave a like. If you didn't, blame the Soviet Union. Subscribe or Reze will pull the pin. See you in the next one. We have spent hours dissecting the devils, the horsemen, and the geopolitical nightmare of a Soviet-dominated 1999. We have looked at the ground, the dirt, and the blood. But now we need to look up. We need to look at the sky, past the doors of hell, and ask ourselves a question that sounds ridiculous until you say it out loud. If the four horsemen of the apocalypse are the villains, then who is God? Fujimoto didn't just pick random names for his characters. He's a man who writes with a scalpel in one hand and a Bible in the other. If you rearrange the letters of the word dog, you get God. It is the oldest joke in the book. But in Chainsaw Man, it is not a joke. It is the hierarchy. Pochita the dog is the deity of this world, and he has his own choir of angels. If you look closely at the followers of Chainsaw Man mentioned by Makima in Part 1, their names correspond directly to the Christian angelic hierarchy. We have the seraphim represented by the insect-like devil. We have the cherubim represented by Beam, the shark fiend. Beam is not just a shark. His name is a phonetic truncation of cherubim. In theology, cherubim are the guardians of God's throne. Beam was the only one who could swim through walls, the only one who remembered Pochita's desires, and the one who carried Denji, the throne of the chainsaw, on his back. It wasn't just loyalty. It was his divine function. Then we have Galgali, the violence fiend. His name comes from Galgalim, the Hebrew term for the ophanim, or the wheels that carry the throne of God. Violence wears a mask to suppress his power. Much like the ophanim are often depicted as terrifying, eye-covered wheels that humanity cannot comprehend. The fact that he retained his human memories and his love for Kobeni suggests that the angels of this world possess a capacity for love that transcends their devil nature. And of course, we have power. Her name isn't just a noun. Powers are a specific rank of angels, the warrior caste tasked with fighting evil spirits. Power was the blood warrior, the one who defied Makima not out of strategy, but out of sheer chaotic loyalty to her god, Denji. This recontextualizes the entire story. The battle between Chainsaw Man and the Four Horsemen isn't just a devil turf war. It is a reenactment of the war in heaven. The horsemen control, war, famine, death are the usurpers. They want to control, weaponize, starve, or kill God. They want to take the power of birth and erasure for themselves to reshape the universe. Makima wanted to use God to create a perfect world. Yoru wants to kill God to prove she is stronger. Fami wants to use God to save the world from death. But they are all missing the point. God doesn't want to rule. God just wants to be hugged. This leads us to the most meta-textual theory in the entire franchise, the cinema theory. We know Tatsuki Fujimoto loves movies. He forces us to watch them. The opening of the anime is a montage of film references. The characters go to the movies constantly. Makima's definition of a perfect world is one where bad movies no longer exist. But what if this isn't just a quirk? What if the world of Chainsaw Man literally operates on the logic of a film? Think about the Reze arc. Denji and Reze go on a date. They act out tropes. The teach me how to swim scene. The fireworks festival. It feels scripted. And then Reze asks Denji to run away with her, to leave the movie of being a devil hunter and live a normal life. But Makima, the director, intervenes. She meets Reze in the alleyway and cuts the scene. She forces the narrative back on track. Makima represents the studio executive. She wants a controlled, predictable story where the hero wins, the bad things are erased, and the audience is happy. But Denji? Denji represents the audience. He doesn't care about the plot holes. He doesn't care about the grand lore. He just wants to be entertained. He wants to feel something. When He fights, he isn't using martial arts, he is using rule of cool. He lights himself on fire because it looks awesome. He rides a shark because it has a blockbuster moment. Denji survives because he is the only one who understands that in a movie, the most entertaining character has plot armor. Now, apply this to the Deathless World of Part 2. If death is erased, the movie never ends. The credits never roll. The characters are trapped in an infinite sequel, getting older, getting weirder, but never being allowed to leave the stage. This is why the aging devil is so terrifying. It is the fear of a franchise that goes on too long. It is the fear of becoming a zombie TV show that should have ended 5 seasons ago. Yoru's goal to create eternal war is essentially a desire for an eternal action movie, a world of constant explosions and stakes, forever. Famia's goal is a disaster movie where humanity is pushed to the brink but survives. And the Death Devil? The Death Devil might just be the one person who wants to turn the projector off. She wants the story to have a conclusion. Because a story without an ending isn't a story. It's a prison. This brings us back to Reze. Why is the fan base so obsessed with her return? It's not just because she is a great character. It is because her arc was a romance movie that got interrupted by a horror movie. We want to see the ending of that film. We want to see the sequel to the Town Mouse and Country Mouse script. If Reze returns now in the middle of the apocalypse, she brings that genre shift with her. She brings the possibility that Denji can choose a different ending, one where he isn't a superhero or a victim, but just a guy who goes to a cafe. But the tragedy is that Denji has forgotten how to be a human. He has become a character. In the recent chapters, he is so dissociated that he is watching his own life happen. He is the audience member in the theater of his own trauma. To save the world, Denji has to break the fourth wall. He has to stop performing for the horsemen. He has to stop performing for public safety. He has to stop performing for us. The final battle won't be fought with chainsaws. It will be fought with choices. Denji has to choose between the perfect world of Makima, a curated film with no bad scenes, the chaotic world of Yoru, an endless war movie, or the messy reality, where bad movies exist, where people die, and where pizza sometimes tastes like cardboard. He has to choose reality. And reality is the only place where he can truly find the Blood Devil again. The promise to find the Blood Devil is the key to breaking the loop. Power is the one character who refused to follow the script. She was a liar, a coward, a narcissist, and the best friend a guy could ask for. She didn't fit into Makima's perfect movie. She ruined the takes. Finding the Blood Devil isn't just about getting power back. It's about reintroducing the chaos of genuine connection into a sterile, deathless world. It is about bringing blood back into a world of dust. So, as we approach the finale of this autopsy, we are left with one terrifying possibility. What if Pochita eats the cinema devil? What if he erases the concept of stories? If he does that, the manga ends. Instantly. Fade to white. No resolution, just nothing. It would be the ultimate Fujimoto move. The author erasing his own works to save his characters from our gaze. But I don't think he'll do that. I think he loves movies too much. I think he wants to show us one last glorious, heartbreaking scene. A scene where the boy meets the girl, the dog barks, and for one brief moment, the world makes sense before it all blows up. I've been AnimeAutopsy. This has been part 7. We have looked at the angels, the directors, and the genre-bending nightmare of Denji's life. In part 8, we are going to bring it all home. We will look at the final fate of Asamitaka, the true meaning of the save the cat trope in a world where the cat is a devil, and we will finally answer the question, is Denji going to die, or is he going to live forever in the hell of his own making? Subscribe, or I will spoil the post-credits scene of your life. See you in the finale. We have reached the end of the line. We have dissected the corpse of this series from the intestine scarf to the Pochita heart. We have looked at the geopolitics of a Soviet-dominated world, the theology of the angelic host, and the existential horror of a reality where you simply cannot die. But there is one final organ we haven't weighed yet. One final piece of the puzzle that decides whether Chainsaw Man is a tragedy or a comedy. And that piece is Asa Mitaka. If Denji is the hero who refuses to be heroic, Asa is the victim who refuses to be saved. Throughout part 2, we have watched her lose everything: her house, her dignity, her arm. And now, in this new world order, established by Yoru and Fami, she has lost her mortality. This is the ultimate irony of the War Devil's vessel. Asa Mitaka, the girl who was suicidal in chapter 98, the girl who wanted to die because she broke a chicken egg, is now trapped in a body that can never, ever check out. The split theory has been circulating for months. The idea that Denji can use the chainsaw to separate Asa and Yoru. We assume this is the happy ending. Denji cuts them apart, Yoru dies or gets eaten, and Asa lives happily ever after. But we are forgetting the rules of the Deathless World. If Denji cuts them apart now, neither of them dies. We just get two immortal, regenerating halves of a broken psyche screaming in eternal agony. This leads me to the darkest theory I've ever cooked up in this mind brain of mine. What if the weapon Yoru needs to kill Chainsaw Man isn't a nuke? What if it isn't a tank? What if the ultimate weapon is Asa herself? Yoru's power scales with guilt. And what would cause Asa more guilt than anything else in the world? Killing the only person who ever understood her. Killing Denji. If Yoru forces Asa to turn Denji into a weapon, the guilt would be infinite. It would be a weapon capable of shattering reality itself. It would be the chainsaw sword, a blade made of the hero we love, wielded by the girl who loved him. It is the perfect, miserable, Fujimoto-style ending that makes me want to vomit just thinking about it. But there is a wild card, a variable that the Four Horsemen, in all their ancient wisdom, forgot to account for. The strongest devil hunter in history, the man with the liver of steel and the heart of stone, Kishibe. Where has he been? We haven't seen him since part 1. Did he retire? Did he die? No. Kishibe doesn't die. Kishibe waits. My theory is that Kishibe has been in hell, not as a prisoner, but as a hunter. He knew Makima's plan. He knew about the Nostradamus prophecy. And he knew that eventually the Age of Devils would begin. So he went to the source. He went to hell to find the one thing that can reset the board. He went to find the Blood Devil. We talked about power in the last video, but let's really look at the mechanics. Power S blood is the only thing that has ever successfully disrupted a horseman's regeneration. It stopped Makima from healing. It messed up her control. In a world where death is gone, biological regeneration is the law of the land. But blood can rot. Blood can coagulate. If Kishibe returns from hell with the new Blood Devil, he brings with him the concept of stagnation. He brings a poison that even the immortals cannot process. Imagine the finale. The world is chaos. People are falling off buildings and snapping back together like action figures. The Fire Devil-esque zombies are burning cities that refuse to turn to ash. Yoru is laughing on a throne of nuclear weapons, and then the sky tears open. Not a door, but a wound. And out steps Kishibe, looking older, tired, and holding a new feral blood devil on a leash. He doesn't say a cool one-liner. He just takes a swig of his flask and says, "Time to clean up." This brings us back to Denji-'s final choice, the choice that breaks the internet. Throughout the series, Denji has been fighting for a normal life. Toast with jam, a girlfriend, video games. He thought that if he could just achieve normal, the pain would stop. But part two has been a brutal deconstruction of that dream. A normal life is boring. It is painful. It is watching your pets die and your house burn down. The Deathless World is the ultimate perversion of the normal life. It is normalcy, stretched out into infinity. No stakes, no end, just existence. To save the world, Denji has to give up on being normal. He has to embrace the chaos. He has to embrace the bad movie. Because what makes a movie good? The ending. The fact that the credits roll. The fact that the hero might die. Pochita ate death to protect Denji, to give him a life without end. But Denji has to look his best friend in the face and say no. He has to make Chainsaw Man vomit. He has to force Pochita to bring death back. It is the exact opposite of every shonen trope. Usually, the hero fights to save lives. Denji has to fight to ensure that people can die. He has to fight for the right to mortality. He has to become the Grim Reaper, not to be a villain, but to be the ultimate mercy. And in doing so, he might have to die himself. But that is okay. Because if Denji dies, he goes to hell. And who is waiting for him in hell? The Blood Devil. Reze. The Darkness Devil. All the friends and enemies he has made along the way. Maybe the happy ending isn't Denji growing old in a house in Tokyo. Maybe the happy ending is Denji, power, and Aki's reincarnation, tearing up the underworld together forever. A heaven made of blood and guts. So, here's my final prediction for the end of Chainsaw Man. The King of Terror isn't a monster. It is the realization that life without death is meaningless. Denji will fight Yoru. He will fight Fami. He might even fight Pochita. But he won't do it to save the world. He will do it because he wants to eat a really good steak. And steak doesn't taste good if you aren't hungry. And you can't be hungry if you are immortal. Fujimoto is telling us a story about consumption. We consume media. We consume food. We consume each other. And in the end, the only thing left to consume is the story itself. When the final chapter drops and the screen fades to white, we will all be left with that familiar feeling. The feeling of the ripcord being pulled one last time. And we will realize that the true Chainsaw Man was the friends we traumatized along the way. This has been the Chainsaw Man Apocalypse Deep Dive. We have covered 30,000 words of madness, theories, and cope. If you stuck around for the whole thing, you are officially contracted with the attention span devil. I'm AnimeAutopsy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, or I will personally send the aging devil to your house to steal your youth. Goodbye, and thank you for reading.